Hello, my friends, and welcome back to All About Gardening. If you have been wanting to get a bunch of free baby plants from your existing pothos plant, then this is the video for you. Today, I'm going to walk you through all the steps on how to propagate new pothos plants simply from stem cuttings, some scissors, and a jar of water. Let's get started. First things first, what are cuttings? Cuttings are a form of vegetative propagation. Essentially, this means we're taking a piece of stem or root and we are growing it into a new plant that is an exact clone of the mother plant. This is a form of asexual reproduction. This is very different from sexual reproduction, which is what we see with most plants that we propagate by seed, especially out in the garden with kale or lettuce or different wildflowers. Pothos doesn't typically flower in a houseplant setting. It only really does that in the wild in its tropical native habitat. So that's why this houseplant is most commonly propagated by cloning, and this is going to give you a bunch of baby plants that are exactly genetically identical to the mother. So one really cool thing about propagating by cutting is that when you're pruning a pothos plant, especially a really long, spindly, unhappy one like this, all of those pieces of stem don't go to waste. You can essentially create an unlimited amount of baby plants simply by taking your prunings and rooting them in water. So for this demo, I'm going to follow this vine all the way back to the base of the plant. This plant's not getting enough light, so that's why it's gotten so long and spindly, and I'm going to cut that off and use it as our demo. Okay, now that we've got a couple stems to play around with, I'm just going to sanitize my tools with a little bit of bleach to make sure we aren't introducing any pathogens into the cuttings. You can use regular old kitchen scissors, you can use pruners or a nice sharp knife. The process isn't technical at all, so just make do with what you got. Now we're gonna need to find some nodes. So nodes are actually really cool if you're a botany nerd like me, because these points of the plant are essentially little nubs where this thing called meristematic tissue exists. Now, meristematic tissue is basically a plant tissue that can literally grow into any plant part. So it could become a stem, it could become a leaf, it could become a root, just depending on the environment it's exposed to. Essentially, it is a stem cell, meaning that that cell hasn't become specialized yet. So all of these little nubs will be found all along the stem of any pothos plant. And interesting fact, this one that we cut off, the nodes are extra spread out along the stem, as you can see, because it wasn't getting enough light. So it started stretching out between those nodes, and that's a common sign that pothos isn't getting the light that it wants. So before you start taking pothos cuttings, you'll just want to take your existing plant and look for the nodes. The way you find them is simply by noticing the little brown or gray nubs that are sticking out at every one of these joint type sections. They are usually accompanied by a leaf, but if your pothos vines have gotten long and leggy or spindly like this one, then you'll just notice them as little divisions along the stem. All of those nodes could hypothetically grow into a new leaf or root, so let's see how to do it. All right, so we're gonna take this spindly vine and we're gonna count back about 3, 4, let's say 5 nodes down to here, maybe down to this 6th leaf. And we're gonna cut a 45-degree angle right on the stem like that, ensuring that we have plenty of nodes that can be submerged underwater and grow new roots. I'm also gonna remove those lower 2 leaves just to ensure they don't rot or anything. And that is our first cutting. It's a little bent at the top because that's the way that it was vining originally, but this will root no problem. So we can keep on going down the stem, and let's take a look at this next set. So we've got this top leaf. 1, 2, 3, 4. We could go right down to here. Cutting below that node, got a little brown stuff. This node's actually not that healthy, so I'm going to go ahead and go up to this one. Again, removing the lower leaf, another cutting. I like to make sure each cutting is about 4 to 6 inches long. And now we get to a cool part that some people will disagree on, but I've had great success with it. This is basically just a stem now. But like I said, each of these nodes has that cool stuff called meristematic tissue that's essentially stem cells that can grow into literally any type of leaf or root on this plant. They're genetically coded to be undifferentiated, essentially. So they can specialize as soon as they know what we want them to do. If we submerge that node in water or soil, it's going to tell those genes to turn on for growing roots, and then it's going to grow roots out of them. But if they're exposed to the air, then they're going to start growing leaves. And the reason I know this works is because I've just experimented with it. You can try it yourself. But this, for example, was just a piece of stem that looked just like this. I submerged the bottom part in water, and you can see these lower 3 nodes started growing roots, and these upper nodes were above the water surface, and it started growing shoots. So, you know, you don't have to be a scientist to figure these things out. You can kind of experiment, and plants will really surprise you. So what this tells me is that I can take 4 to 6 inch cuttings of any piece of pothos stem, put it in water, and get a new plant. It might look a little weird at first, but trust me, once this starts growing, it's going to be a beautiful vine. So I'm going to make use of all my prunings just to going to make sure I get the healthiest node. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do that one. And then I just like to cut that top tip off so that I have a node at the very top as well, since we don't have any apical top leaves on these cuttings. 1, 2, 3, 6. Go down to this node. That's a fat node. I'm sure it'll be good. So you can see right here, the stem isn't as healthy. I'm not going to use that section because I don't want to introduce any pathogens into this water. I'm going to be rooting all these cuttings together, but this one will still be okay. This part of the stem is a little icky. Throw it out. We have plenty more. And then down at this part, you can see the that spindly pothos had always also started growing some leaves already from here. So we can hypothetically submerge this as well. It's going to be a little short, but it's already got leaves. Why not make use of it? So your cuttings aren't always going to be the picture perfect ones that you'll see in a lot of those propagation station kind of designs where you see people displaying all their perfect straight cuttings. If you do want a perfect straight cutting though, there's no shame in that. I'm just making use of prunings that I needed to take anyways. So if we want to get a really pretty cutting, we can also just go over here to this potted marble queen and do the same thing. Count back 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to leave this leaf and take my cut right there. And what this is going to do for this plant is it's going to encourage it to keep bushing out and sending out more vines. This cutting is going to give me an exact replica of this mother plant. So that's another fun thing to note is that, like we said, when we're taking cuttings, we are making clones. So we want to make sure that we're cloning the type of pothos that we want. In this case, we were cloning a classic golden pothos. This is a jade. So we're going to get a jade from those. And this is a marble queen. So I'm going to have a lot of combination of different cuttings, which will make a nice fun display. And here's another beautiful one ready to go. This is the ideal scenario because we already have leaves at the top to fuel that new root growth. It can start photosynthesizing. But like I said, when we start with a stem, these plants are so resilient and so ready to go that, you know, that'll work too. Okay, y'all, we are getting so many free plants right now. This is super cool. So it's crazy how easy this is to do, but it seems so intimidating to people, so they don't do it and they'd rather buy a pre-potted plant. But as you can see, this is the most hands-on part, and then we're going to throw these babies in some water and basically just leave them, change the water a few times, and they'll start growing roots, and we'll have all these free cuttings for nothing. Okay, so next up, I just wanted a few more from the jade. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's cut this baby back to here. This plant is so healthy. Ideally, you are taking your cuttings from the healthiest plant possible. But like I said, pothos are just resilient. They call them devil's ivy for a reason. They're pretty dang hard to kill. And if you imagine this plant vining along in its native habitat in the tropics, they're just growing so crazy. I'm here in Florida right now, and they grow wild. They're almost invasive in some areas when it's warm and humid enough. They're in the soil. These vines are just growing like this. They're falling in the soil. They're rooting there, growing a new plant, vining up a tree, putting out aerial roots in the humid weather. So they're just ready to replicate for us. Plants are the best. So there's my next cutting from the jade. And I'll just leave these vines here for now. They're nice and pretty. So next step is you can root your cuttings in water or soil. So the easiest way is with water. That's what I'm going to show you. But if you check out our article over at allaboutgardening.com, you will see that you can also root them in soil, just like this one. This one came out pretty nicely. It's a really easy process, but I think that the water rooting is better for beginners because you don't have to worry as much about it rotting, and you can see the roots actually forming, which is cool in its own right. And you can make a beautiful little display. So I like to keep mine in a jar here because I'm in a moving vehicle. But over on Amazon or at your local arts and crafts stores, you can get like little vials. You can use some hose clamps, hang them up on the wall, create displays with cuttings in them. And it's just a cute way to create a propagation station that is also aesthetically pleasing. So do as you please. You can start with any sort of container when you're going the water route, and it's really as simple as filling it with water and putting the cuttings in there. But you know, a few extra details never hurt. So number one, Pothos is pretty sensitive to chlorine. In fact, we all are. That's a whole nother story. So make sure that you're using purified water, either bottled water, or you can get tap water, let it sit out for a while, let the chlorine dissipate, and then put your cuttings in. Number two, you can use any container, but glass tends to be the best because you can see everything that's happening, and that's the main reason. So I'm going to take my cuttings in this container. I can do one that I want the leaves to stay above the surface because this was kind of a funky one. So this is actually a great way to keep those leaves up above. But the rest of my normal cuttings, I just arrange in here. You can put a lot in one container. I don't see any problem with that, just as long as they are staying aerated. So second tip is that we know Pothos, if you've watched our transplanting videos or read any of our content about potting Pothos in soil, we know that it loves aeration and drainage. In the case of rooting them in water, the same still applies. We don't want this water to go anaerobic or lose oxygenation. So we want to change it, maybe let's say every week, every 2 weeks. If the water starts to look murky, you can just pull your cuttings out, dump it, refill it, just to keep everything nice and aerated in there, prevent any root rot or disease from happening. And of course, don't cram a million cuttings in one jar, but I'd say this is a good amount. This is totally fine. So after your cuttings are submerged, again, make sure that no leaves are submerged. I think that should be obvious, but we just want to be sure that no leaves are underwater, only stems. Leaves are above the water. So once we leave them in there for, sometimes it's as quick as a week, 2 weeks, we're going to start seeing roots growing. So these are at different stages of growth. You can see this cutting has just started to send out a little root from that node. I think this one has been in there for about a week. And over here, we can see that funky stem one I was telling you about earlier. This one has been in there a lot longer, maybe a month or more. And those roots are pretty long. This needs to go into soil so that it'll keep sending up shoots. This one, another little baby. So that's probably a couple weeks old. Just keep an eye on them. The main thing you want to make sure is that your pothos, if you want to transplant them to soil, hypothetically, you could keep them in water forever, but if you want a big, beautiful plant, you probably want it to go into soil. You don't want to let those roots get too long. So once they're a few inches long, that is an okay time to begin preparing to put them in soil. If you want to ease that transition, let's say that all of these have been in here for like a month. They've all got roots that are 3-4 inches long. They look pretty strong. I can start adding a little bit of peat moss or coco coir into this water to help them start adjusting to being in the soil. And then after a few weeks, I can just pull those pothos out and root them in a container. Just transplant them the same way you would with any other plant. So that's just going to mean filling your little container or a larger container with a potting mix that is ideal for pothos. Peat moss, coco coir, perlite, compost, all great options. You can buy pre-made blends as well. And then you would just put your cutting with its developed roots into the soil and you're good to go. Start treating it like a regular pothos plant. So final couple of tips is that One, I guess we're on like tip 4 now. We want to keep these plants these cuttings in the same environment as we would like to keep our mother pothos plants. So that means bright indirect sunlight, a moderate level of humidity. If you live in a really dry area like out west, then I like to keep a mister bottle of water, and sometimes I'll mist the leaves, but that's not as huge of a deal as long as they are room temperature and they have bright indirect sunlight. These cuttings will wither and get all sort of sunburned and unhappy if they are in really bright direct sun, but at the same time they obviously need light to continue photosynthesizing, sending that energy down into the bottom of the cutting to grow roots. So be sure that they have enough bright indirect sunlight. They're at room temperature, staying nice and cozy. They can be a little warmer than that if you have, a kitchen window or something like that that gets some nice afternoon sun, as long as they are not being burnt by those rays. So there you have it. Propagating pothos is super, super simple, and I hope you have so much success with your cuttings. If something happens and one of your cuttings gets a little rotten or it starts wilting, don't worry. You can always just toss that out the window and cut another one. Hopefully you'll end up with a ton of free, healthy, happy plants that you can give away or cover your house into a lush pothos garden. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to learn more about pothos, about houseplants, or about growing your own vegetable garden, you've got to go check out all of our amazing content over at allaboutgardening.com. Have a good one.